When a man betrayed the empire, guess who paid the ultimate price? Not him. Not always. It was the women of his family. His wife, his daughters, his sisters, even his mother. Imagine this. You wake up one morning. Your life is normal. You're living in the household of a respected official, maybe your husband, maybe your father. Someone you trust, someone who seems loyal to the throne. But then, soldiers arrive. They don't knock. They break down the door. And in that moment, your entire world collapses. Because he made a choice. And now, you're about to pay for it. This isn't fiction. This was reality in Imperial China. And what happened next was one of the cruelest forms of punishment ever designed by human hands. A punishment that didn't target the guilty, it targeted you. Let me take you back. Imperial China wasn't just a country, it was a divine order. The emperor wasn't just a ruler, he was the son of heaven. His word was law, his will was absolute. To disobey him wasn't just a crime, it was cosmic betrayal. It was an insult to the natural order of the universe itself. And here's the thing you need to understand. In this system, you weren't an individual, you were part of a clan, a family unit. And if one person in that unit betrayed the emperor, the entire unit was considered contaminated. Think about that. Your identity didn't belong to you. It belonged to your family name. And if that name was stained, you were stained too. No matter what you did, no matter how innocent you were. This was the foundation of everything that came next. Now, here's where it gets even darker. The empire had a law. It was called the 9 Degrees of Punishment, and it was designed to destroy not just the traitor, but everyone connected to him. Here's how it worked. When a man was accused of treason, the punishment didn't stop with him. It extended to 9 degrees of relationship. His parents, his grandparents, his brothers, his uncles, his cousins, his sons, his grandsons, and yes, the women, his wife, his daughters, his sisters, his mother. None of them were given a trial. None of them could defend themselves. The guilt of one man became the guilt of dozens, sometimes hundreds. You could be living your life, completely unaware of what your husband or father was planning, and suddenly you're dragged into the imperial court, accused of nothing, guilty of everything. There was no escape, no appeal, no mercy. So what happened to you? What was your fate as a woman in a traitor's family? This is the heart of the story. This is where the cruelty becomes almost unbearable. You were labeled, marked, not as a person, but as contaminated property. The empire saw you as an extension of the traitor's crime, and because of that, you needed to be dealt with. Some women were sent to serve in the imperial palace, but not as honored servants, as the lowest of the low, scrubbing floors, cleaning waste, forced into back-breaking labor until your body gave out. Others were handed over to soldiers on the frontier, married off without consent to men stationed in the most remote, brutal regions of the empire, places where winter could kill you, where food was scarce, where survival was a daily struggle. And some were simply exiled, sent to frozen wastelands in the north or disease-ridden jungles in the south, places where the empire didn't need to execute you, nature would do it for them. But perhaps the worst part wasn't the physical punishment. It was the public humiliation. You were paraded through the streets. Your name was erased. Your status was stripped. You were made an example of, a warning to every other family in the empire. All because of something you didn't do. Now, the empire didn't see this as cruelty. They saw it as purification. There was a belief, deeply rooted in imperial philosophy, that treason was like a disease. It infected the bloodline. And if you wanted to restore order, you had to cleanse the blood. So they created rituals, ceremonies designed to symbolically purify the empire from the stain of betrayal. You were forced to participate. Sometimes it involved public acts of submission, kneeling before officials, confessing loyalty to the throne, renouncing your family name. Other times, it was more brutal. Scarring, branding, physical marks that would follow you for the rest of your life. The empire called this justice, but it wasn't justice. It was control. It was terror disguised as divine order. And you had no choice but to submit.
Let me tell you about one case, one story that shows just how far this system went. There was a high-ranking minister, a man trusted by the emperor himself. He had power, influence, respect. But he made a mistake. Maybe he sided with the wrong faction. Maybe he questioned an imperial decree. The details don't matter. What matters is that he was accused of treason. And when the soldiers came, they didn't just take him. They took his wife, his 3 daughters, his elderly mother. His wife was sent to a labor camp in the far north. She died within a year from exposure and exhaustion. His daughters were given to soldiers as forced brides. One of them was only 14 years old. His mother, too old to work or travel, was executed, publicly, as a warning. None of them had committed a crime. None of them had even known what their husband, father, or son was planning. But they paid the price, in full. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was policy. This was how the system worked. Here's the thing. This wasn't just about punishment. It was about fear. Think about it. If you knew that betraying the emperor meant destroying your entire family, would you risk it? Would you dare to speak out, to question, to resist? No, you wouldn't. Because it wasn't just your life on the line. It was your mother's, your wife's, your daughter's. The empire knew this. They weaponized family bonds. They turned love into chains. And it worked. For centuries, this system kept people in line, not through loyalty, not through respect, but through terror. You didn't obey the emperor because you believed in him. You obeyed because you couldn't bear the thought of what would happen to the people you loved if you didn't. That's the genius and the horror of it. The emperor didn't need to punish everyone. He just needed to punish enough, publicly enough, brutally enough, and the rest would fall in line. Let me take you to the worst moment, the moment that still haunts the pages of history. Imagine you're one of these women. You've just been arrested. You've just been told that your husband, your father, your brother has been accused of treason. You're sitting in a cold cell. Maybe you're with your mother. Maybe with your daughter. Maybe you're alone. And you know what's coming. You've heard the stories. Everyone has heard the stories. Tomorrow, your life as you know it ends. Tomorrow, you could be sent away, forced into servitude, handed over to strangers, humiliated in front of the entire city. And there's nothing you can do, no one to appeal to, no hope of mercy. So you sit there, in the darkness, and you think about your children, your parents, the life you had just days ago. You weren't a traitor. You weren't a criminal. You were just someone who loved the wrong person, who was born into the wrong family. And now you're about to lose everything. That's the reality these women faced, not once, not in rare cases, but again and again, across centuries. So here's what you need to understand. This wasn't about justice. It never was. It was about power. Absolute, unquestionable power. The emperor didn't just want to punish traitors. He wanted to make sure no one would ever dare to become one. And the way to do that was to make the cost unbearable. Not just for the guilty, for the innocent, for the people who mattered most. Your wife, your mother, your daughter. They became the ultimate leverage, the ultimate weapon. And in the end, the greatest fear in Imperial China wasn't death. It wasn't torture. It wasn't even exile. It was knowing that your choices could destroy everyone you loved, that your decision could condemn your family to a fate worse than death. That's what the emperor understood. That's what kept his throne secure for thousands of years. He didn't just rule through law. He ruled through terror, through guilt, through the knowledge that in his empire, innocence didn't matter. Loyalty was everything. And if you failed, everyone would pay. So I want to ask you something. Think about this carefully. Do you think this was justice, punishing an entire family for one person's crime? Or was it pure tyranny, a system designed to crush any hint of resistance through collective punishment? Some would say it was effective. It kept the empire stable for centuries. It prevented rebellions. It maintained order. Others would say it was monstrous, that no system that punishes the innocent can ever be called just. What do you think? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to see more stories like this, stories that reveal the darkest corners of history, hit that subscribe button. Because history isn't just about heroes and victories. It's about the people who suffered, the people who paid prices they never deserved. And their stories deserve to be told.